days you work, one whole day to play. Come on, everybody, wear your roller skates today. It's Saturday, 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 it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday,
Saturday with Renee.
Colonialism, like religious violence, was not like.
I think we're live.
I think we're live.
We are.
Are we live? If we're live, can we
Can
get
folks
like
hear us?
Leah thought she was late. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is the other thing that I always do. So annoying. So annoying.
We look for ourselves in the archive, but like the archive itself is
So annoying.
It's not.
We can hear.
Yay! Awesome.
Hi, Craig.
Oh, let's go back to the art. Are you gonna watch it from here? Or there?
In the StreamYard. There we go.
Amazing.
Amazing.
It's actually Renee, folks.
We are going to get started here in like 3 minutes. We've got a nice little crowd in the room. You all will have to sit through our intro part here. But thank you for joining. We're very excited. I'm so excited to be here with my comrade and my sister. And we are really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's real.
It's real.
It's
real. There we go.
Thanks for joining us.
We were going to play a trick on y'all and stand and sit real still so that you...
Because we're children. I think we're just giddy and manic because we're in real life.
I know.
Like we're actually sitting next to each other.
Oh, so Craig, who just said sorry, is also part of the party in New Jersey. So
thanks for joining online either way. Hi, folks.
So it's occurring to me now, hopefully the sound here without the mic is okay.
Okay.
It's usually okay.
Okay.
We'll
make it. We got to project.
Yeah. And then I can always.
I'm not known for my quiet voice.
I know. Girl. Priscilla, it just occurred, we should be good without the mic, right? Or do you think we should? Yeah.
I can also set up the mic.
What do you think? Think it's easier to set it up? Your call, Ben.
You can always do like we did last time and just share it, I guess. You can always
No, well, it's that.
Okay.
What do you think?
Maybe we do it for folks in the room just in case. Yeah. Just for accessibility also. Yay!
This is my neighbor. And then this one we can just share.
Yeah. That's easy.
Yeah. We can just. Definitely. Cool. There we go. All right, everybody, we are going to get started. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm so excited to be here live and in person with my dear sister and my comrade, Lara. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm Renee Johnston. I am host of Saturdays with Renee on Black Liberation Media. I'm usually behind the screen. So
special treat.
Yay, live and in person. For those of you who have not been able to get a copy of the book, shout out and thank you to Margot from Watch Young Booksellers. They're located in Montclair, New York. and there are copies of the book in the back available. There will be time at the end for you to actually meet Lara and have her sign your book if you're interested in that. She's always been very generous with her time, so I'm very appreciative of that part. For me, Lara blessed me with an early copy of the book, and so I got to read it when it was still in the PDF version and still being printed. And she came on the show, and we had a conversation with Dr. Jared Ball, who's my co-host on Saturdays. And while that was happening, I already knew that this was going to be part of the plan. So for those of you who are always getting emails from me, you know that this is always part of the plan. Like, are we bringing people to the hub, or are we bringing people to Newark? Which one are we doing so that we can get more people in to get whatever information I wanted, that I wanted everybody else to have. So thank you again for coming out. We are live streaming right now, also on Black Liberation Media. So shout out to the crew, the Undefeated Chat. Look at Jay in the chat.
I know.
I told Jay to bring his wife to New Jersey. I'm mad at you. But I am so excited and thrilled to be able to share this with you all. So I am going to turn the mic over to Lara.
Oh,
yes, because as you know, I like my guests to tell themselves. You got to tell on yourself first, who you are, why you're here.
All right.
And then we'll get started.
All right. مساء الخير للجميع، شكرا لوجودكم. My name is Lara Sheehi, and I'm here because Renee's fucking awesome. And right? No, clap. We gotta clap for Renee. Yeah. She's amazing. That's really why I'm here. I mean, I've been saying I'm on a little mini tour, and folks have asked me if I'm tired, and I'm just like, this is the best excuse to hang out with comrades. And Renee is one of those very dear comrades. So that's, you know, it feels amazing and invigorating, and it's been so generative, and I'm so grateful to everybody for engaging with the book, for sharing with me. Who am I other than that? I'm a Lebanese Arab, which means a lot to me. I'm an anti-imperialist, and I'm grateful to those who continue to fight the good fight in this settler colony, and a shout out to the folks who continue to live under the boot of settler colonialism and American empire, to our siblings in Iran and Lebanon, Palestine, Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti. There's a lot going on in the world, and I think I'm here also with that urgency and that fire, and I'm really excited that I get to do that with you, because I feel like there's something also about the intimacy and the relationality and the genuine comradeship that makes us feel different, and the texture is very different. So thank you for having me.
Of course. So as we were kind of negotiating how this was all going to work, I wanted Lara to read something. And so, of course, I have, for those of you who are familiar with me, I have my pages of notes. I have my highlights. I have all the things. But we agreed to a part of the introduction that, for me, highlights why the book was important for Lara. And that's the thing. This experience for you all is because I want you to read the book, right? Get the book, read the book, talk about the book, get other people to read the book, talk about the book, because the book is trying to remind you that you are not crazy, right? It's not in your head. What you think is happening, right? And Lara is trying to prepare us for that mental strategy of constantly reminding yourself that you cannot allow anyone else to capture that mental space. So I'm going to, because she don't travel with her own book, which is crazy.
It's so bad. You know, you're hanging out with friends and you're like, can I borrow the book from you? I don't even have my own book with me, so thank you. And this is a passage that Renee has chosen. It's really hard to choose something to read, so thank you for choosing this. This is from the introduction. For those of you who have the book, it's on page 25 if you want to follow along. starts at the top. If we are serious about revolutionary futures, we must think about how the psychopolitical affective work of these violent systems impress on our psyches, insisting not only on being felt, but on becoming normative fixtures within the topography of our internal worlds. Through the seizing of psychoanalysis, I aim to map out what has become clear to me as a central node of revolutionary demobilization through the explicit exploitation of the psychic realm, sometimes merely through the activation of confusion, fear, and despair. To be more specific, in despecializing psychoanalytic method to, for example, detect and counter the intrusive violence of Zionism, or to trace how imperialism works by also lodging itself within us, we can aid our movements in demystifying the logics by which oppressive ideologies and practices pursue the psychic with intent to intrude upon it. We can understand this aim as the quotidian and yet equally violent arm of psychological operations that we usually associate with governments, their militaries, or parastate actors. This book aims to forcibly capture and retool psychoanalysis, recognizing the realm of the psychic as being intimately linked up with the violent intrusion of oppression, as well as in the theoretical framing and direct action of revolutionary movements and struggles. More specifically, From the Clinic to the Streets is written within the context of the global rise of fascism, climate disaster, and imperial techno-feudalism within a new age of late industrial capitalism. But if this book is written in the conditions of this neo-Malthusian global racial capitalism, it is also written in a new spirit of global internationalism and the expanding conversation around abolitionists, anti-capitalist, and anti-racist possibilities for the future. My hope is that in this articulation of a despecialized psychoanalytic knowledge, we can keep track of, be aware of, note, recognize, attune to what it feels like to not immediately, at least, reach for the escape hatches that dislocate, dismember, and dissociate us from the pain and suffering in which we must be implicated if we are to usher in revolutionary futures. I have a deeper hope that this book can be one of many spaces of practice, remembering and reassociating with the intent of building up the psychic stamina and clarity, what I detail later as psychic militancy. Thank you. We will need to face fascism head on. In this way, I follow in the footsteps of others like Misha Fraser Carroll, who asks how we can transform, quote, alienating and debilitating experiences and turn them outwards to politicize them. My goal in detailing my understanding of a despecialized psychoanalytic method is not only to add one more weapon to sustain our critique of systemic violence, but also work to take direct action or actions against it. Here I hope to offer something, however small, to the already vast and ever-growing set of knowledge practices, especially from the Global South, that aim not only to reclaim the methods that have domesticated and demobilized our revolutionary struggles, whether through formal means such as psyops or through soft power in the form of professionalization, but also to transfigure psychoanalysis dimensions such that it becomes a weapon against the psychic intrusion central to all forms of violence. Thank you.
So I'll say that I picked that specifically because you lay out really why you wrote the book.
Yes.
Right? And so for anyone who's familiar with Lara, and if you're not, shout out Psychic Militancy on YouTube, which is Lara's podcast, where she identifies and talks to a whole plethora of people. You have said often, this book is for my comrades. Yes. It's for the comrades. It's also on the flyer. You also on this book is for the comrades. Yes. And I want for you to talk a little bit about the importance for you that this not be something that people read and set aside, but that it be something that people read and hold with them, right? Like I picked this shirt on purpose because this is part of it, right? Like I'm still here. I'm still standing. I woke up this morning. Whatever was pressing upon me, I pushed through, and I'm still here. And that is part of that consistent push of psychic militancy. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, and I say it all the time because because it needs to be said, because anytime somebody sees psychoanalysis in a title, you have the right to be like, what the fuck is this? Like, should I pick this up? Right? So it's not a book for specialists, right? And it's not a book for clinicians specifically, because it's not a manual for them. And now the people who are clinicians, some in the room, who pick this up are also comrades. And that's really important for me, because for me, I think those of us who are in the struggle are the people who are the most targeted by psychological operations. So I don't spend time talking about liberals. I don't care about liberals. They have their own gymnastics to guard themselves against stuff. And they make us live in their world. So this book is really meant to be for those who are actively in the struggle and might feel the crush of these violent systems come down on them, come down on us on purpose, right? And so when you say, you know, this book is to keep it with you, what would it be like for us to constantly practice? And that's why psychic militancy for me is not an unconscious process. And this is where I do break from psychoanalysis on purpose, because psychoanalysis busies itself with containing everything we do in the unconscious, which feels like a real counterinsurgent move to me, because if it's unconscious, we don't know anything about it and it's never discoverable, and therefore we can't use it. So for me, psychic militancy is actually very conscious. It's a militant act of political consciousness that we commit to every single day. And so if keeping the book with us is a reminder of that, it's also a reminder of all the people who animate the book and who live in the book, who I've learned from, political prisoners who guide our way, revolutionaries who have always been at the heart of our struggles, but who are stolen from us. And it is a sort of, you know, commuting between temporal planes, where it's like the actual pull for us to disconnect from our struggles is another pull to make us feel like individuals and make us feel really intimidated by everything up against us. So it's less about the book itself, it's more about who lives in the book and who makes up the book. And it's comrades who do that. It's comrades who are no longer with us, it's comrades who've been assassinated, it's comrades who are incarcerated and captured by the state, it's contemporary people. I was very intentional about who lives in this book for that reason, because it's a book that I keep these people near, and I learn so much from us and from them. And so that's the thing I think I would say, is that to keep something like this nearby and to continuously be reminded that we can engage in a different way of relating with oppressive systems. They're going to do what they're going to do. They have billions of dollars behind them trying to do this. But what that tells me also is that, you know, if psyops, psychological operations, were easy and were a one-time thing, oppressive systems, governments, their minions, whoever engages in this could come down one time and go, did it, and then fuck off, right? But they don't. They constantly hone it. They come after us even more. Every time there's an uprising, there's a sort of intensification of this targeting of us to, again, make us break off, demobilize our movements, disconnect us, both from the current moment. So it's like we're literally pulled in to miss a tune away from everything that's actually happening in front of our eyes. We see mobilization, and then we're let something. And also they disconnect us and dislodge us from the histories that run through us, through our collective peoples, through struggles that have built this moment, from the revolutionaries who we reach to. Even if we reach to them all the time, it's this sort of question in the book always, what makes it hard for us to retain access to that? Right. And that's the psychic intrusion, is like even the revolutionaries that we hold dear, in the moments of our struggle or despair, it's hard to connect to their message. And that's not by accident. So I think that's why I continuously come back. I'm like, comrades, this is for us, right? Because we will be the ones that are targeted in those moments where we're wrenching ourselves from the grip of power. That's when we'll be most targeted, right? So if we can kind of walk the path, arm in arm, with the people that have fought this fight, then we're good.
So I'm glad you spoke about the people in the book, right? So how many people have read the book already? And it's okay if you haven't, like this is not a test. I'm just trying to gauge.
One and a half.
Okay. This is perfect, right? I love this because you're not gonna get a lot from the actual book, right? I want you to walk out of here like, let me go read this book tonight because I want the full experience of everything that they talked about today. So I started your book, as you know, on it was like a random night at like 8 o'clock. And I had to stop because I had to get up in the morning. I was like, I have to go to bed. So I read for like 3 hours, and I closed the book down. And then like 2 nights later at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm texting Laura like, oh my God, I just finished. You can't be serious with this. And it is that. I promise you it is that. And proof, see, TJ, because he texted me yesterday, and he was like, I'm about to read this book in one day, because this is crazy, right? So, and part of that is because what Lara does, as she's explaining to you why this work is so important, right? Why maintaining this psychic militancy is so important, is she actually walks you through her work with her patients who have this experience and who have helped, as she's been guiding them, to also guide you on this path of trying to determine how do we do this as a joint venture, right? Because there is no doing this alone, right? As much as you may think, everything that you think you can do by yourself, I promise you, you can do better with someone else, right? And so can you talk a little bit about the choices of who you brought into the book? And we're going to talk about one of them specifically. You know, I was like in tears, right? But can you talk about the choices you made with your clients and who the students and, you know, why you picked those specific people?
Yes. She makes this so easy. I love you. Thank you. It's my head girl. So yeah, part of it is, you know, I'm a clinician. I'm a practicing clinician. And this is one of the things that I sort of talk about in the book, that I feel like it's an ethical imperative for me to disrupt the violence that my field has always done. Not just right now, right? We know the violence is done against the LGBTQ community, against Indigenous folks, against folks in the global South more broadly. Right now, there are psychoanalysts specifically who are consulting with the IOF to do genocide better. Every anti-trans bill that is being passed in this settler colony, the settler colony of New Zealand, settler colony now known as Australia, settler colony now known as Canada, and the UK have psychoanalysts behind it. Every overthrow of a leftist government, particularly in Latin America, has had a psychoanalyst behind it. So part of it is saying, there's no way I'm going to disconnect from the field that reared me. What I'm going to do is be a thorn in their side and be like, we're going to redistribute this knowledge that you have actually sequestered behind the door and think that it's yours, when actually you've extracted it and exploited people and people's interiority to get it, right? So the choice also to bring patient material in with their permission was partially based on that, because that's a big part of my life. And what does it mean to be a clinician that follows in the tradition of Frantz Fanon or liberation psychology and doesn't believe in the disconnect between the psychic, the interior, and the social world, and my political commitments to that. Like, I'm a leftist, And first and foremost, and I'm anti-imperialist, that's not separate from my work as a clinician and what do I do in the clinical space. So that is where the patient material comes in because it's my lane. But it's also like, this is a way we can do this. There is a different way to take up clinical work. There's also examples from supervision. So I give supervision to clinical psychologists as well. So there's examples from there. There's examples from organizing. Some of the examples are from individual people. Some examples are from organizing spaces that I've been lucky enough to be invited into. And I think I wanted a spread of examples as a way to also show and highlight and texturize that these psychic intrusions happen everywhere. There's no space in which they don't show up. And also there are ways that in every space, while there might be specificities, that there's a portable logic that we can take to psychic militancy that can show up in all the spaces. It's not like somehow, oh, in my clinical room, this has nothing to do with it. To the contrary, I really wanted clinical examples in there to show that this actually is the place we should be responsible to be engaging in this type of work as well. The other reason why I'm using examples like this is because I think sometimes it's easier to see examples and be sure of what we're seeing in front of us in spectacular examples. Things that happen on a large scale are easier to see. We know that ICE is a death squad, right? We can see that, those of us who are really in the struggle. It might be hard to wrap our minds around it, and that feels like a mind, like how could this even be happening in front of us? But sometimes it's harder to hold on to. The things that feel mundane, the everyday things, are the things that are harder for us to track because those have already been transformed into normativity, into common sense, into the things that just happen. Well, this is just the way the structure is. It becomes harder for us to imagine anything differently. That is the work of psychic intrusions, to make us believe in foreclosures and make us believe that nothing else could be possible, that there's no version of us struggling that could get us out of this structure, because the structure is the thing that is decided upon by power, right? Mm-hmm. And so these examples that you see are examples of like, that feel mundane, not because they're not special and particular to the people, but because of how casual they are, because of how they happen all the time. I have to say, one of the most moving things in going around with the book and talking to people is that so many people have come up to me and said, I saw myself in this. This example was me. I had this happen to me. This happened in my school. This happened as my employer did this to me. I'm struggling with this with my political party, my political organization, my organizing as students from the student intifada. That is what I wanted to highlight, because this is fucking real life. Those are the people we want to be engaging with and learning from and working alongside. And I just wanted to be very intentional to do justice to the stories that were also, generously shared with me. And again, it's been so wonderful to hear people kind of reflect that back in that way.
So for those of you who have never participated on the back end of a live stream, the chat cracks me up. So
I can't.
Black Liberation Media has what we call the undefeated chat, because they're hysterical, right? And so Leah wanted to know where your shirt was from. Now your husband's in the chat. Hi, Stephen. So Stephen answered her.
He's been answering.
Right?
Right.
Leah was like, let's see if they read the chat. We're reading the chat, Leah. I can't. Undefeated. I love them. So I can't with them. They crack me up every time. This is every Saturday. This is my life.
It's
every
great.
Saturday.
It's
It's
great.
hysterical. So as you speak about people in specific,
Yeah.
So personally for me, this has been like a nest, like I needed this book. And I think I've said this to you privately, because
Now publicly.
because for the past 2 years now, I've been going through this thing,
Yes.
right? That I don't and won't talk about publicly. Sorry, it's not an intentional like, like I have to wait until it all kind of shifts itself out, and then I will happily tell everybody the entire story.
Yep.
But in the book, one of the patients is a Black woman who is going through the things,
Yep.
and who has the experience of someone telling her like she's overdoing it, right? Like that. What I always get is like, you're just being extra. That's the word I always get. You're being extra, which makes me want to punch somebody in the face, just so we're all clear, right? And as a Black woman, right, I live with that angry Black woman trope, right? So I spend a lot of time trying my best to figure out how to make sure that I am not presenting myself as the angry Black woman. And then I have to remember that no matter what I do in front of someone who has decided that I am an angry Black woman, I am an angry Black woman. It doesn't matter what I've said. It doesn't matter how kind I've been. It doesn't matter how polite I'm being. None of it matters, right? And so I am learning, and your book is helping me with this. I hope you, like, seriously. I am learning to remind myself that I cannot change what other people are bringing to me, right? So there's nothing that I'm gonna do that's gonna make that adjustment in their head. So I'm not trying to do it anymore, right? Let them think what they want. Let them whatever. Now, I will say also, me being an Amazon definitely does not help the situation, because at 6 feet tall, like, you automatically, on top of all things, like, I have the audacity to be tall and not like rail thin, right? So none of that helps the situation. But I'm gonna read you the part of Lara's book that made me cry, right? And so I text you when this was happening.
Yes, you did.
And I was like, I can't. So the client is talking to you in the session. And y'all don't laugh at me, I can't see. So y'all don't make fun of me either on the screen, I can't see. And she says, yes, but that is exactly why I can't let this idea that I'm being over the top be what guides me. I know I am not. It's a fucking semantics game to these people. There's nothing senseless about this violence. It is a long-term game for these people against my people. This didn't start yesterday like it does for the woman at work. In her mind, like she just discovered the moon. And I had to put the book, I had to put it down. I was on the computer reading. I had to just take a break and walk away, right? Because this is my life, right? Like the constant trying to navigate other people's fears, trying to navigate other people's problems with me when I haven't said one word to you, right? Now, admittedly now, because I'm totally out of control and I just don't care anymore. Like someone in the audience asked the sweatshirt that I always wear. My Israel is a settler colony that's very colorful, that it takes people a minute to realize that that's what the sweatshirt says. And I wear it everywhere. I'm like in Whole Foods with my right, walking the dog, right? And this is where being 6 feet tall actually comes in handy, because I think every now and again, somebody's like, but then they'd say, let me not test that water, right? So for me, this work is so critical to every time something happens, I remind myself it's not me, right? So I ask you, like, she's got the face already, she's like, what's about to come? So I bring this all up because I want to know for you, what is, like, how does this translate for you? Like, how, when you're talking to someone and they're like, is it me? And you're like, nah, mofo, it's not you. Right. It's not you. Like, what is, like, how does that work? Like, how do you get somebody to understand? And I'm asking you it this way because when these people
Yeah.
encounter somebody who's like, is it me? And they say, go read this book, right? They're also going to say, and this is why you have to read this book. So can you talk a little bit about getting people to understand that it's not in their head?
Yeah. Yes, I can. But let me correct something, please. You said you're out of control. You're not fucking out of control. Every single space in the world should be a space in which we say Israel is a settler colony.
True.
Right? And
Very
disrupt compulsory Zionism. So if it comes in your package, my dear, all the better. You're not out of control. They're fucking out of control.
Yes.
Okay, so that's number one, is how do we sort of recalibrate these, even this casual sort of throwaway line that we do is part of a larger infrastructure that has us already thinking we're sort of out of line or we're doing something. No, there's a fucking genocide happening that's supported by this settler colony, which was also founded on a genocide, right? They see themselves in each other in their twinning. So there's nothing you could do that could be out of control, right? And that's, I think, again, it's not a pedantic statement. It's not just me picking on you because you're my friend. It's me saying, this is how we do it. How do we continuously bring ourselves back to the condition, right? Because we get busied up with all the other shit, with politessen, with socialization, with you being polite. And here's the thing, you said, I'm not doing that anymore, but I know you, you're a kind person. You will continue to do that. And they'll continue to project on you.
Yeah.
So you're also not going around like punching people in the face, no matter how much you want to do that, right? And sometimes people deserve it, but that's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think also coming back to that and constantly reminding ourselves what is actually the condition and what are all the ways we're pulled away from that. And then we're arguing an argument like over here. We're fucking having an argument. And this was the example from the patient. And that's kind of how I want to use that as a way of how do we do this. What I will say quickly is I really don't think I have, number one, I don't believe in this top-down teaching people something. If there's anything that we learn from all revolutions that also start with the people is that people know the source of their suffering. They know viscerally who's fucking them up, who doesn't care about them, right? And then they're coerced into different positions because they have to survive. So number one for us clinicians, like this is what I had some clinician in one of the talks was just like, but not all psychoanalysts. And I was just like, if you're not that psychoanalyst, why do you care so much? Like you're confessing here about it is you psychoanalyst, but also we're not that special. Like we're really not that special. We're one of many places that we can make sure there's revolutionary fire that's there and not stop people's fire and stop them up. Absolutely. But there's every other part of the world that we have to actively also nurture, right? And that means we're in the street, we're sort of organizing with people and we're not disconnecting that. But this patient, this example is great because it's a Congolese patient who's working at an NGO and she has conflict around working in that space for all the liberal bullshit that it's about. And she particularly works around issues that have to do with quote unquote awareness campaigns of what's happening in the Congo. And she's a committed leftist radical and her politics are aligned and she has a lot of conflict around that. But she comes in talking about, similar to what you're saying, this one word that this one particular woman, a white woman in her job always says is senseless violence. All the senseless violence that's happening in Congo. And she's enraged at that, right? So when you ask, what do we do, is number one, not stomp out the rage. That rage is a symptomatic register of something happening. And that something, like for my patient and for you, is what you're picking up on is a coercive relational demand made of you, but it's not meant to be spoken. So people walk around and say, oh, you're the angry Black woman, but there's actually an ask of you in that. And it could be multi-determined, and ask of you to be disciplined, and ask of you to submit, and ask of you to not name reality in the room, and somehow it's your problem that you're just like, hey guys, that was kind of fucking racist. Right? Or this shit that we're doing here, a little bit problematic. then you become the problem, right? This is, of course, Sarah Ahmed 101 about the person who brings up a problem becomes the problem. And that's the story that tells itself over and over and over again. But in that space, when she's being confronted by that woman who says, oh, isn't this senseless violence? And this comes from, liberals don't say that shit and just expect it to go blink at them and walk away. They want you to join them. That's the coercion. They want you to believe in their worldview. The coercion is that this is the worldview that actually exists, and you must leave behind all your quote unquote delusions for a world that can exist, that doesn't create the conditions in which people in the Congo suffer. That this isn't their birthright, right? As Black folks, as sort of racialized masses or poor people, to constantly struggle, and we have to intervene in a saviorist mentality. Like that's the only thing, they're fixed in their place like that. So in that small word, so much was packed into that shit, right? And so that's how we do it. It's not me being like, hey, this is what, it's sort of being like, let's expand what's packed into that space that you are not allowed to actually say. Because here's the thing about power. Power is able to do what it does because it expects not to be confronted or named about it. And the second we do that, it clamps down so hard on us, right? You can be as Black as you want, darling, but the second your politics are in the fucking room, forget about it, right? The second you actually make a demand, a relational demand, or refuse the projection. You're just like, no, sorry. That's not me, that's you. You see how angry people get. And they don't know what to do. And then, so I think part of psychic militancy is also how do we lean into the refusals and we're not being assholes. It's to kind of undo also that socialization, that somehow my refusal to bend to the will of violence and the oppressor, to make them confess and move versus us do that constantly. That's part of it too, is how do I learn to do that? Because we live in a world that constantly tells us, and by the way, takes advantage of our politics, that we actually want to be good people in the world and are trying to build a world that, you know, that is not built on exploitation and domination. That shit gets abused and exploited. And then they just continue on their way, right? So it's all that.
So you mentioned something.
Questions.
Listen, this is, I've gotten very good at asking very good questions. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew? So you mentioned something that actually refers to a note that I made on Tuesday.
Okay.
So on Tuesday, Lara did a talk at the People's Forum. Shout out to all the folks.
They're awesome.
I mean, it was awesome in 2 minutes. So, but you were talking about repetition. And it was this idea that we're always being told to not repeat ourselves. Don't repeat, don't repeat, don't repeat. And that is part of the psyops, right? Because power repeats itself. So the reason you're always repeating yourself is because you're always faced with the same thing over and over and over again. The reason for almost 50 years now, and I guess I shouldn't say it that long. I was a kid for a little bit of that. So, so let's say for 35 years now, I've been chirping and complaining about being called an angry Black woman is because I keep getting called an angry Black woman, right? It's not because like, I just want to complain about shit. It's because no matter what I do, that is what I'm confronted by, right? And so there was a very interesting discourse that you all didn't really get too much into. So I whipped out my notebook. I was trying just to watch, but I whipped out the notebook. And I made a little note to remind myself to ask you to talk about the repetition of oppression and why that repetition of oppression is why we should not allow other people to tell us to stop repeating our fight of oppression. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Thank you. She sets it right up for me. It's great. Let me root this in where this comes from. So psychoanalysis has a mainstay sort of idea around what's called the compulsion to repeat, or repetition compulsion, right? And this goes all the way back to Freud. And the idea is that people who experience something traumatic, whether it's small t or capital T or something distressful, are destined to sort of repeat this in relationally, especially, until they get over it. And they repeat it over and over and over and over again, usually unconsciously, because they can't tolerate the distress it causes when they sort of take it on head on, right? And we can sort of see versions of that, right? Like the things that we might come back to over and over again in different relationships. I'm not sort of saying that it's not there. Right. What I am saying is, and there's a lot of reasons why psychoanalysts don't like me, but this one is a big one, is to be like, what would it be like to seize this concept from psychoanalysis and turn it on its head? And say, actually, your prescription for cure and health is that somehow we work through the repetition, right? So there's an entire industry that says the way to prove that you have become healthy and functional is that you work through that repetition. You're not doing that anymore. And I want us now to say how that has sort of leaked into the mainstream, to all the ways we've been told things, to socialization, to the politics of civilizational discourse, that somehow if you're the one in the room saying something over and over again, that you will feel like you are failing. We feel like if we're still talking about racism, if we're still talking about cis heteropatriarchy, if we're still talking about climate justice, if we're still talking about these things, that somehow we've gone wrong along the way. That idea comes from somewhere. That is part of the psychological operations of the field, that is part of counterinsurgency, to make us feel like the repetition is actually pathological. My provocation is if we turn that on its head and say no to what you were saying before, this is part of what I write about in the book, it's violence that repeats itself. It's power that repeats its violence over and over, and in very patterned ways, actually, right? So there might be specificities, but if we really unpack it, it looks the same over and over again. So if people are there repeating what seem like very basic things, my invitation to us is to think about those things and not feel like somehow we're small, or oh, here we are again, or this is such a pedantic point, or I feel like I'm making the most basic point. No, in the face of power, oppression, and fascism, we need to repeat the smallest things, because the point is for us to forget the condition. This is what we were back, right? It takes us off course, and then we start arguing about other things. But what would it be like to commit ourselves to that actual repetition? The repetition is also part of the psychic militancy. That's what I mean by a daily political practice. We repeat things. Every revolutionary in the world, every struggle we learn from, every person that we think is our hero in the struggle, and they are, practice what it's like to remain clear. Our political prisoners have always known that the psychic and the affective and our mind is central to power. And so they repeat consciousness, right? And they repeat who their oppressor is. And they repeat that the condition is incarceration. Therefore, no version of changing their own repetition is gonna change that condition. And certainly not impress upon their oppressor, right? Like that's not the way it works. So what would it be for us to actually lean into the repetition and know that it's key? Now, not only is it a side, it's not a side thing, it's actually key. It's the centerpiece. It's every day saying, these are the conditions. This is who the oppressor is. These are the tools of oppression that they use. Here are the ways they're gonna fuck with my mind. Here are the ways it's not just about changing how we think, it's about intruding on our psychic space and reconfiguring our internal world so that we stop realizing that's what's happening. They conscript us into that, discipline us, and then we also start to discipline each other, right? Because that's the work of power, like doesn't even have to be there anymore. This, by the way, also has its history in the actual work of psychological operations, where very early on, and kind of like in the 1950s or so, it started to consolidate around an actual psychological operations warfare unit in the context of this settler colony. There were two other places that were already doing psyops hardcore. Can we guess who they are? Israel is one of them. Think about this. Before the 1950s, fucking this new settler colony is sort of doing, it has an entire thing of psychological operations. And the other one is the biggest perpetrator of empire in the world, the UK, right? Right. Well, and that's the thing. And then the United States goes, oh, hold up. Can't let them have all of that. We need one for ourselves. And then, like everything else, U.S. empire become the most violent of violent sort of purveyors of psychological operations in the world. But that repetition comes from it, because if you read the counterinsurgency manuals, which I spent a lot of time doing, that's what it's also about. It's about repetition over and over and over again. Then the thing that I say in every talk, and it's so important for us, is why also our repetition is so important. Because in all these counterinsurgency manuals, I really want to impress on us, I'm not a nihilist, I'm not a pessimistic leftist. The whole point of this book is to tell us, this is not a foregone conclusion. Our psyche's contested space. They will do their fuckery, but we have weapons against it, right? Because in the counterinsurgency manuals, to feed our repetition, not only did they tell us we repeat over and over and over and over again, tell them who to hate, but they also say, guess what? Militants can't change their mind. They are too many resources for us to really pour into that. So don't mess with the militants. Get the centrists involved, right? Go for the liberals. Go for the in-between people, the mediators, they call them, the people who have common sense. Make them hate the militants. Make them think if the militant weren't there, their life would be better. Make them think that if it weren't for those fighting or struggling for liberation, that the conditions for life would be so much better off. That's why we need to repeat, because their method is repetition. So for me, I'm like, let's seize that shit. Listen to the architects of psychological operations and say, what is our regiment of repetition? What do we need to do that? And I think it actually helps us then feel like there's something we're actually engaged in, rather than the psyops of thinking, if I'm back here, it means I'm failing.
I'm telling y'all, the book is everything, everything. So I actually don't even remember if you, in that, said the word precondition. I feel like you did, but maybe you didn't. You see how I hear things? Because I already know.
Because you're there.
I'm there. I already know what you're
hashtag.
thinking about. Literally, the hashtag is liberation is the precondition. And this is Frantz Fanon.
Yes.
And Fanon is one of, I don't even know if they're words. I don't know if they're words, but he is one of Lara's guiding lights.
He's my bestie.
And the idea that liberation is the precondition is something that I don't, even having read Frantz, which I have, I don't think it actually really struck me until I was reading the book and understanding how you utilize that, right? If you walk into the room and liberation is your precondition, no matter what else is happening, liberation is your you don't accept anything short of that, right?
Yep.
And it makes you want to fight everybody.
Yes.
Right? Because you realize you're not liberated. You realize every step of the way there is someone trying to prevent you from breathing easy. So in the book, I'm going to read a lot from this. This is how we get the book in, so that you get excited about it. So in the book, you say, that is, nothing short of meeting the precondition should satisfy us. And no compromises, psychically or otherwise, should be made until this goal is achieved. This is the essence of psychic militancy. It is how we remain in alignment with our revolutionary goals despite psychic intrusions, It's how we remain willfully conscious of the expansionist project of power, aware that the reach into our interiority is in service of a domination that cannot be complete without theft of the psychic terrain as well. And so I read, girl, I stopped and made a note about it, and then the book came in the mail, so I had to highlight it in the book. I'm a total mess over here, right? But that understanding of the psychic terrain,
yeah,
right? And so so one of my things about electoral politics, right, which seems very foreign to this conversation, but I promise you it's not, is I don't give people shit about their decisions. Don't vote, do whatever, right? I'd like everybody to leave the duopoly the fuck alone, but I know that's a hard ask, right? But I'd still present it as an option, right? But for people who don't vote, I don't argue with them about it, but I like to remind people, in your decision to not participate, you are conceding that space to the very people that you don't want making the decisions, right? So this is where the problem lies, because we all know that electoral politics is absolute nonsense, right? You're sitting in the room with someone who has been booted off the ballot, not once, but twice, right? So this happens consistently, right? The system is set up for you to feel like there's nothing that you can do, so you're just not going to do anything. And thus you've conceded that space. And what Lara does in this book is she's trying to remind you that your mind is also a terrain that you should never concede to the people who are trying to prevent you from pursuing your liberation, right? It is contested space, and you should always be fighting to maintain that terrain, right? I just got literally like my hair, like the hair on my arm, just like, right? So this is important, right? This understanding that terrain is important. So can you talk about that next?
Yes, I absolutely can. It's an invitation to talk about Fanon. So like, this is a treat. Let me start there, right? So this idea of liberation is the precondition comes from a 1957 political speech that Fanon did in Ghana called Once Again, the Reason for the Precondition. And he was the sort of representative of the FLN in Ghana and was talking about this. And we actually weren't given these papers until 2019 when they were translated. So with his clinical papers come some of his political speeches as well. And it took me actually several times rereading this to really grab, because like on the surface, you're like, liberation is the precondition. Okay, that sounds cool. That sounds very Fanon, right? But then it's a provocation to be like, what does it mean to actually have that be the non-negotiable starting point? And he walks us through it because there were critics, this will sound very familiar to many of us here, there were critics of the FLN that were coming in and saying, you need to reason, you need to be more reasonable. You can't hold this line, this militant line. And so he's responding to them and saying, you are asking us to be reasonable. Number one, we are reasonable, but we're not going to compromise through the guise of reason when the oppressor hasn't given up anything. That is deceitful, and nothing can be built on deceptions and lies. I think that's his actual line, right? Nothing can come out of deceptions and lies. So his position of the precondition is liberation is teaching us what does it mean to be clear that no negotiation with power is going to end up where we want it to if we actually cede anything, because they've got everything in their hands. The leverage is with them. So that is a grounding place of like, liberation is the precondition. It becomes almost like a meditative provocation for us about what does that mean, which means what are all the ways in which we are seduced or conscripted into moving off of that with the promise that somehow a compromise will make something shift. It's never concrete either. It's always the promise that that will come. And that is why it's a seduction, right? So grounding ourselves in liberation as the precondition is also refusing the seduction of reason, because we understand how reason is a civilizational discourse that has actually contributed to the further oppression of peoples who have been told that they are savages, that they are unreasonable. It's racist to think that somehow the FLN wasn't thinking reasonably about things. I mean, through all the meetings and every strategic position they were taking, I was saying to you that this is recognizable to all of us because it's the same sort of shit we hear, whether it's about Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran or any one of these things. I mean, Trump was just like, I'm surprised they're not giving up, right? I mean, he actually said that. So this is the idea of like somehow they're being unreasonable by actually, you know, fighting and actually saying, guess what? We've had enough with you interfering in our region, and this is how it's done. So that's number one. But there's also another thing about sometimes we get lost in like what the impact is going to be. And that makes sense, right? We think we're going to make this intervention, the precondition is liberation, and then we hold on to what the impact is going to be. I believe in the world we are struggling to bring in. I want to say that clearly. I believe in that world. I know we will see it. We see it in pockets and pieces and everywhere in the world. There are people in West Asia fighting for that, fighting for us. There are people in Cuba every fucking day fighting for that, right? So that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that irrespective of what it moves, that practicing to take that position of the precondition being liberation is important in and of itself for us to fortify. If we're talking about psychic militancy, if we're talking about barricading our minds against the psychic intrusions that tell us the only way is compromise, the only way is bending your will, the only way is this version of it, then us taking that position and saying, no, you don't dictate the terms of that, because you're dictating the terms of that necessarily means that I am ceding psychic space, that I'm working on a foreclosure that will actually capture all the possibilities that I can even imagine, rather than working to emerging possibilities. The other version of this is that we're always tasked with knowing what the fuck is coming. Like, well, you don't know. You don't know what your liberation is going to look like. It's like blaming people for having, oh, well, you're poor, you have an iPhone and a fridge, right? It's the same version of that. We're always tasked with that shit, rather than saying, actually, no, what I'm committed to is the knowledge that the conditions that created this world, where a genocide is possible, is not the world I want to live in. And I'm struggling to figure out what the version of that world is. But for us to do that, we come back to liberation is the precondition. There's no other way around it. But it's a practice to do that.
Yes, yes. I can't even tell y'all. So Lara and I and our dear Samantha Youssef, who I hope is out there somewhere. Love you, Sam.
Are you in the chat?
We're on like a group chat, right? And every now and again, when we can get schedules to match, we get on a Zoom together. And this is a Zoom that just lives in my Zoom account, by the way. So at any time that one of us needs something, like you can just hop on the Zoom. It just exists so that we can, you know, jump on and support each other. Sam's all the way up in Montreal. And so, you know, Quebec, one of them, Canada, somewhere.
Montreal, I think.
So I was trying not to locate her.
One settler colony to another.
Right. And so, you know, so for me, part of my excitement with planning this whole thing is like, I get this all the time, right? So like, I can turn on the podcast and get like a little piece of Lara. And then if I have a question, I can just text her, right? Like, it's fabulous. I can't even explain it to you. So part of my excitement in doing this is because I wanted this for you, right? Part of this work for me is about engaging with people in a way that when they walk away from whatever it was that we just did, they feel like they walked out of the room having gained something that they did not have when they walked into the room, right? So it's always this constant work of like, how do I do the thing that's going to allow people to walk away feeling like they got something, right? So Annalise is in the back, right? For 2 years, we were doing these abolition workshops. She's about to get a note from me because I got this idea, so we got to restart them. I know, I'm so out of control. But, you know, it's always about like, how do I do a thing to get people to want to not be propagandized, to want to decolonize their brains, to want to be liberated, to recognize that calling 911 is bringing someone with a costume and a gun to your door, right? Like all of the things, like how do we get people to understand it? And I could, I guess, like do the Instagram, but that's not, I feel like real life works better, right? And so for all the greatness that came out of COVID, which included being able to talk to people in all parts of the world without having to get on a plane, right? It's still, to me, a necessary step to bring people in the room so that the experience of bringing something to them can be felt, right? Like tomorrow when you wake up, I want you to be like, that shit was dope yesterday, right? Like that's part of it. So I preconditioned this because in a little bit, I'm gonna stop asking questions, which will allow you all time to ask questions. And then, like I said, we'll stop everything so that you can meet Lara and get her to sign a book, get a copy in the back if you don't already have one, all of those things. So my mostly last question, and we'll see, because it's gonna depend on how she answers this question. I might have another one, but I'm gonna, you know, we've been going for an hour, so I want the people to be able to get you, right? So one of the things that I wrote down is derail us from remaining tethered to and clearly able to identify material reality. The reason I wrote this down is because part of what got this whole thing started was, I think I said something to the effect of like, I feel crazy, right? And so you said, well, yeah, that's how they want you to feel. They want you to feel like you're crazy, right? But you're actually recognizing your material conditions. You're cognizant of the things that are happening around you that everybody wants you to think it's just because you see the world that way, right? You quote somebody in the book, and I don't want to mess the name up, but she said, hold on, let me, because I wrote it down.
Of course you wrote the page.
You know I wrote it down. I wrote it down. It's on page 97. Palestinians are not struggling to survive Gaza. They're struggling to survive Israel.
Mary Turfa.
Right? And what a profound understanding, right? Where they are is not the problem, right? It's where the other people who are trying to steal where they are, that's the problem, right? Me recognizing that racism is a problem is not the problem. Racism is the problem, right? So like, I remember when George Floyd and all the things, I remember it was spray painted somewhere. It was like, you think you're sick of racism? Imagine how sick I am of it, right? And it's like our material realities are something that we are constantly being told is just in our minds. It's just you. You're imagining all these things, but I'm not. Like, y'all are actually killing Palestinians. I'm not imagining that, right? You're actually stealing and killing now people in Lebanon. Well, not now. I mean, it's been for a while, but right? You are actively dropping drones in Haiti, right? You are like, all of these things are actually happening. It's not me. I'm not the problem for recognizing it. The problem is you're doing it and you don't want me to recognize it. You don't want me to call it. You don't want me to name it, right? So we had to get in the habit of doing just that. Name the enemy. right? So when I tell people all the time, boo, that's capitalism, right? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's like the reason you're on your hamster wheel is capitalism. The reason you feel like you don't have time to enjoy anything is capitalism, right? The reason you feel like you have to keep your job so you can keep your insurance so you can pay is capitalism. It's all, name it, it's capitalism, right? And so we have to get in the habit of not shying away from the realities, of the material realities, of naming them, of not being worried when somebody gives you the face because you've named the thing that they also know exists, but they just don't want to admit to, right? Right? Because, you know, Elon Musk is not rich and a trillionaire because he works so hard, right? So these are all really like important things. And this basic idea of I am not crazy. This shit is actually happening. And I'm gonna say it's happening because whether you want to admit it or not, I am not the crazy one if you don't think it's happening. You're the crazy one if you don't think it's happening, right? So can we talk about that?
A very small thing. Yes, we can. Let me say just off the top, there's also a political, relational, and personal importance and currency to saying these things. It's not just, you know, it's not just a slogan. It's not just a throwaway line. It is part of the repetition that helps us get into this regimen of naming material reality, because psychic intrusions are fundamentally meant to intrude on our psychic terrain and make it such that we actually don't have access to that condition and that reality and that truth, right? It veers us off course all the time. And it does that in many different ways. One, literally forgetting. Two, making us feel like, oh, we're the silly ones having to say this, or we're the ones constantly repeating, we're the failures. We've said that before, right? But every version of this, we know, we've all felt it, right? Or, oh, but this is such a small thing. What's the point of me saying it? The point is that it is a practice in remaining tethered to material reality if we understand that power does everything to dislodge us from that material world. And dislodge us from the material world, not just for shits and giggles, but because it actually wants to disrupt our ability to mobilize against it and demoralize us and defang our movements. That's really, it is about our political movements. Anywhere there's fire, that's where the psychic intrusions will come harder, to make it harder for us to connect to that material reality and be able to tell the truth. So the chapter on psychic intrusions starts with a patient of mine saying, Lara, I feel like I'm going crazy, right? And the important thing about this is that we've probably all had a version of this that had to do with the genocide in Palestine and Gaza specifically. But the version that I kept hearing, whether it was with patients or comrades or friends or organizers, was that in the same breath, they could recount everything in excruciating detail. There was nothing crazy about, but it still felt like they were localizing it within themselves as though they were the ones who were crazy, right? That's what started me thinking there must be something else happening. This is not just an after effect. It's not accidental. It's not like oppression happens and then we become symptomatic. It's actually that our mind is the target. It is the actual target itself. And so then from there, if we can think about Zionism or capitalism or imperialism as expansionist projects, that's their job, to expand, to infiltrate into every part of our life and normalize their presence to the point where we can't imagine a world differently. We can't imagine it configured in any other way. Expanding into the psychic terrain, this is the theft of the psychic terrain, has to also happen for the impact, the full impact of its power to work. The psychic terrain has to be stolen too, which is why this repetition, not localizing it within ourselves, saying I'm not crazy, but also naming the condition. Again, going back, naming the condition is a center piece of this. So let's give examples of this that look kind of like they can be just nothing, but like everybody's seen the Lego movies, right? This is massive trolling, A+ trolling, yes. But it also is a way to continuously come back to the condition. If you watch the Lego movies, the stories they tell are truth-telling about the conditions, right? And that's part of it. It's going back. the first-person view drones that Hezbollah is using, where we can see what's actually happening as well. And they will strategically release them when the Zionist entity says something like, oh, we've taken over this village. And then the Hezb responds and goes, we don't see you here. And they'll show you footage, right? Now, we can think about that as part of their own psyops, absolutely. But it's also a way to remain tethered to material reality, because despite our best intentions, we get pulled in to the lies that power tells. Power lies about everything. It lies to us about our condition. It lies to us about who's responsible for that. It lies to us about what we need to do. It lies to us about all the things you can compromise and then you're going to get out of this. It lies all the time. So the counterforce to this is a daily regimen of repeating what material reality is. And there are examples everywhere that we see this. So the chapter on psychic militancy ends with this Ghassan Kanafani interview, and I unpack it again, and I say this is not an empty academic exercise. It's not meant to look like I'm just doing a textual reading of this interview. The interview is one that we might have seen clips of, where he says this is a conversation between the sword and the neck. That's the interview that I'm talking about. But I unpack the whole video, which rarely gets circulated, the entire video, and certainly not the monologue by the racist Richard Carlton, who comes in and shows us a pre-glory Beirut before these wretched, militants come in and take over, right? And then we see this exquisite example of Ghassan Kanafani refusing and remaining tethered to material reality. And one of the things I walk us through in the book is that it's not about changing Richard Carlton's mind. And we see his monologue. That man was not going to shift. He is civilizational to the core, right? Racist, imperialist, orientalist to the core. What Ghassan Kanafani is doing is practicing both for himself and for his comrades and for us watching. What does it mean to refuse the invitations, the seductions? How do we do that? How do we practice that? Now, it's very easy to look at someone like Ghassan Kanafani and go, damn, he's good at this, because he is. But he practiced that. And more importantly, he was able to do that because he remained tethered to material reality and then externalized that. It was not an internal thing. He made it known. He pointed it out at every turn. It's not a war, right? It's not a conflict. It's a war, right? It's not whatever, because Richard Carlton goes, whatever. And he goes, no, it's not whatever. This is you trying to fix the questions in a particular way. And if you ask these questions in this way, then you're going to get this answer, right? When he tells him, what if there was, the pain and the suffering, why don't you stop that? He goes, the pain and the suffering and the death of whom? He makes him confess his position. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, back to the point of if there's anything for us about learning to name things, it's also about us understanding, number one, we remain connected to the condition, and number two, there's something important in just making power confess its actual position. And it goes back to what you were saying about people calling you an angry Black woman, is what does it mean for them to actually be made to say that, rather than you have to hold that? Because that's the coercive relational demand, is you have to hold that affectively, psychically, knowledge-wise, rather than force the oppressor to say what it is they want of us or their actual position. Because in that, the last thing I'll say about the Ghassan Kanafani interview is Richard Carlton ends up saying, but what about stopping the death, right? And he goes, of who? And then he says, what if there weren't any, why don't you just talk to them? Why don't you just talk to them? He keeps entreating him into dialogue. And he goes, talk with who? About what? And he goes, about just stopping the fighting, no matter what. Right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. But he's not making that ask of the oppressors. He's making that ask of militants. Mm-hmm. And he says, but if there was a room without guns and without all that, could you just talk? Which tells us, that's the point. In this colonizer's mind, there's a fantasy that under settler colonialism, there are any rooms without guns. When every single piece that has built that room was built by guns. If the gun's not in the room doesn't mean the gun's not there. But for a colonizer, that's the fantasy they want to live in, right? When we engage in naming the condition, when we cede no psychic space, when we name all these things, when we make power confess, we don't let them live in that fantasy that somehow there's a room without guns under settler colonialism or genocide or racism.
Yes. So I lied. I do have one last thing. Sorry. But get your questions ready because we do have time. This is intentional. We have time. So you said it, or you said something earlier that I made a mental note and I almost let you walk out the room without, and then I would have been mad tomorrow that like I forgot to ask you about it. And you talked about not being nihilistic.
Yes.
Right? And actually being hopeful.
Yeah.
Right? And actually recognizing that we're actually fighting for the world that we want to see. Right? And when I see the videos, can I just tell you, if you've never seen the Lego videos, you have to search for the Lego. They're the best things ever. They're hysterical, right? It's all Iranian propaganda, right? To show people how ridiculous the US is. It's great. It's fantastic. I don't even know really who's doing it, but I'm all for it.
They're great.
And, it's whenever, and you do this, you tend to do this in your conversations. Jay, also a material, Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, another fantastic channel if you're not watching them. We always make sure to talk about, so why don't we give up? Why shouldn't we give up? Why is it important that we keep going, right? Why should the revolutionary continue, right? Why should we always be waiting for the revolution and not giving up on that possibility, right? Because I know for me, that's what keeps me going, right? Like my mother, hi mommy, my mother doesn't want to watch anything where people are not talking about why they're still fighting.
Yep.
Right? She don't want to hear nothing about giving up. She's done with like worrying about things not happening. She's all about like, when's the next fight going to happen so I can go watch that happen, right? And I want to invite you, before we let our guests ask questions, to talk about the importance of not giving up.
Yeah.
Because that has to be.
That's psychic militancy. I'm not hopeful, I'm sure. I'm certain, because we are winning. So let me say another thing that feels like, oh, it's just a statement, but it's not. The global majority is with us. The global majority is pro-Palestine. The global majority knows that this settler colony is the heart of evil empire. The global majority. You might not feel it because everything is being shoved down your throat to make you think that people don't realize that, but people do. People in the settler colony do, let alone outside the world, many of whom have had to live under the boot of empire, of course, and the destruction that it's caused, both environmentally and also to lives, human lives. So that's number one, is that fire, that sort of clarity. And I think the reason why we can't give up is because there are people fighting every single day that haven't been given up. And there's it's sort of a redistribution of risk and of stamina and being able to sort of focus and attune to the fight that's happening and not the seduction we're always invited into to the things that aren't happening, right? This is a purposeful misattunement. We are pulled away from all the struggles that are happening right now, either through a promise of it's coming later, when shit's happening right now. There are folks in LA and in Minneapolis and in Chicago that are actively kicking out ICE. Newark, actively. I've watched those videos at the airport too, right? Yeah. Actively. That's why they have to give out 70-year sentences to people for just moving around anarchist magazines or zines, right? There's shit happening right now. So it's also to question ourselves in that moment when I lose sight of what's happening right now, what is being mobilized through me and what is it being used for? What is it stabilizing? Power will mobilize our affect and our emotions and our psyche in particular ways, not because we don't feel those things naturally, but it's always a question of suspicion to say, why now? Why am I feeling despairing now? What does that shore up? Who does that help? And who does that actively take me away from? In the moments when we give up, you are coercively and actively asked to disidentify from that militant in Gaza, from the militant in Lebanon, from the everyday person in Iran, from the everyday person in Cuba, from the everyday person here, the poor person, the migrant, right? Every person who bears the brunt of violence the most, in those moments of despair, that's what's happening. You're disconnecting from them. You're disidentifying from them. So if there's anything about why we can't give up, it's to keep that fabric. It's to not allow power actually to atomize us, make us individuals, make us feel small, make us believe the lie that they have won. They have not won. They have not won. That's why they're melting down. That's why they're ferocious, because they haven't won. But they need us to believe they haven't, and not only just believe it psychically, but then act that way. We seed psychically first, and then all the material impossibilities happen after the fact, right? So first psychically, then everything else happens. The last thing I'll say is why not give up? Because this fight has been gifted to us by those who went before us. Very simply, right? And went before us decades ago, hundreds of years ago, or people who just yesterday were murdered in Lebanon, or the day before in Gaza, or the people who were killed in Venezuela, right? Or by a sitting president who's kidnapped and sitting in a fucking incarcerated in this settler colony, which nobody talks about anymore. Right? It is our responsibility to carry that forward. There's a word in Arabic called wajib. It's a duty. And that there's a different relationship to duty. It's not like it's something you carry forward because that is the configuration we have relationally, and you do it dutifully, and you do it because you owe it to the collective, not as a sort of burden, but as a responsibility that we have because we are building the world. We're not leaving it to them, like you were saying before.
Everything that I thought.
You just mind melded with me.
I couldn't have planned this better. It's everything that I wanted. And I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you.
I am. So I'm going to open the room for people who have questions. So that everyone can hear you, you'll have to come up and grab the mic, and then we'll have to repeat the questions so that the people online can hear it.
Our mic.
So that our mic, right. We got a whole dual mic thing going. And then there is a passage that I want Lara to read at the end from one of the chapters to make sure that we do that. And the last thing in your book that I might have to write it on something that I look at every day is exhaustion is never neutral.
Correct.
So every time you feel tired, remember that's how they want you to feel. It is never a neutral position, right? And I sincerely, this book changed a lot for me, and I so appreciate your friendship, your love, your sisterhood, all the things that we get to share. And I appreciate that you made the stop in Jersey so that you could share it with everybody.
Thank you, Lara.
All right, does anyone have any questions? Did I really do that good? I couldn't have done that good. There we go.
Yeah. Sana.
So I have two questions. One is I'm wondering that how do we do all of this sustainably? So like if the systems that are attacking us are repeating and we have to repeat in response, then that's like it's a lot because you have to do that all the time. And I was a organizer in SGP at Rutgers, and what happened like during the like year that the encampments were happening was I remember like for myself it felt like it went to a point like the organizing I was doing went to a point where it's like not sustainable.
Yeah.
But then it's like how do you decide what is sustainable? Like to a certain degree it's like, well, it was sustainable because I was alive. But it's also like, well, maybe it wasn't sustainable because like I ended up graduating late because of everything that year. So it's like, maybe that's not sustainable. But how do we figure out like what sustainable means to us and then do it?
Mm-hmm.
That's my question.
Yep. Thank you so much. So for those online, the question was, how do we sort of do this work of psychic militancy in a sustainable way? And then Sanat, right, shared that they were part of organizing on campus and SJP. And then you didn't use the word burnout, but I hear that so much. So I'm going to say sort of it became unsustainable. So number one, it's not sustainable because you all failed. Right? It didn't stop being sustainable because of your failures. The student intifada was a success. It changed the world, right? That it became unsustainable was because the entire infrastructure became asphyxiatory around you, and power mobilized everything at its fingertips to make you stop, right? So if we're thinking about sustainability, this is an example of going back to the condition where I've heard from so many students individualize the failure, even when they don't know they're doing it. There's a way in which they turn inward and disconnect from the social fabric and think if there's something different we could have done, or we've run out of steam, or any version of this. I've also heard like faculty members say this, and I'm like, I don't know what students you're looking at, because they look like whack-a-mole to me. Every time they freaking get like put down here, they come up another place doing something else, right? So there is a change in tactics, but I think tracing what the condition that made it unsustainable was is actually a really important, rather than you all feeling like we couldn't make it sustainable. The conditions that you were put under could not have been sustainable. Right? Everything came down on you. There's still students going through disciplinary action and being arrested.
They just
right?
raided,
the FBI
they just raided Michigan.
Students. So that it seems like such a small thing, but it's actually a really important piece to say that. The concrete thing that I'd like us to think about is a larger action of what does it mean to redistribute the responsibility, radically redistribute the responsibility for this to be sustainable. Because it's not just on the organizing and the space the movement is localized, but everything else, all of us, to make certain that the students continue to do that, right? I'm speaking as a former faculty member, right? That would have been every faculty member's job is to do that. People in the community being able to do that. Now we know there were versions of that. That's why I'm saying it didn't fail. Because we saw the most beautiful examples of community bringing food to students, people coming in, doing that. In that space, there was an actual example in real time of how things can be configured differently. And that's why it needed to be snuffed out, right? So it's both coming back to the condition and telling the truth about what made it not so, and then also saying, for all of us, what do we have to reconfigure in the infrastructure? What do we constantly have to antagonize? What do we have to disrupt so that movements that are happening continue to be able to happen? It can't just be you holding that responsibility alone.
There's a question in the chat, and then I see you. So Leah wants to know the intentionality of using the word liberation as opposed to the word freedom.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I don't know that I had thought about it up front like that. There's something, I will say, as soon as freedom, and there's something so jingoistic about that word. So US based about like I've been seeing billboard 250 years of freedom, right? And it's like, so maybe there's something unconsciously, like I just like fucking hate that word because of what it's been done to it, not because of what it actually means. And there's something about liberation that feels very active to me, that's in motion, right? That's not like, oh, here's the end point, freedom, and then it's done. I think this goes back to, it's like the struggle is part of the liberatory piece that we are constantly struggling. Now, I don't think the words themselves have those things. I'm talking about my own association and psychoaffective investment in them, which is something. But our comrade Dylan Rodriguez does talk about lexical warfare, and it talks about the ways that we actually have to be, aware of the ways that language and precision is actually really important. So a lot of what I talk about in the book is being precise, right? And so maybe that's why I'm like, the focus on liberation is so that we don't get caught up in there's an endpoint that I'm going to reach and that's it. Right? But thank you so much for making me think about that out loud.
I have also two questions. The one is about, so from what I understand of the frame, it's a lot about intentionality and materiality.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that comes to my mind again and again, and I have to notice this throughout the years from different perspectives now, but when the materiality doesn't allow you to have like the time to engage and the time to connect and the time to find the comments, like I'm wondering if there is anything as something as an action plan or something like as jumping to action plan, totally. But like more on what this frame can offer us in order to do this step intentionally. What is the intentional next step when you're living this materiality? That's the one thing. And the second question is more like psychodynamic. I'm curious. So, militancy is more into the conscious, and I'm wondering what you fantasize as you're hoping through this work on the conscious, what you fantasize for the unconscious.
All right, two good questions about what do we do when the material conditions don't allow us to engage in this way, like have time, how to do that. And then the other thing is a clinical, theoretical question about in making this conscious, what do I imagine for the unconscious? Okay. The first one is sort of similar, right, to the answer that I had before, that if we don't have, what I'm more concerned about are the ways that people localize and pathologize and internalize the blame into themselves alone and no longer have access to the conditions that you're talking about, right? So if there's no time, what would it be to tell ourselves over and over again about what are the things that are in place that make it such that I have no time? What is that connected to? And it's not just like, oh, it's just not me, like this sort of liberal self-help stuff that is also pacifying and completely counterinsurgent, right? It's to say, number one, here's the condition. Number two, what is this condition intended to do and why, right? And that, I think, at least frees up something for us not to be fixed in place and to remain antagonistic to those forces that might it create space where, for example, if we're feeling like we don't have time, a lot of the times we are socialized to think that we need to work in big movements. I need to have 70 comrades around me. When you actually look at like revolutions and the most militant people and you count them, they weren't big cadres a lot of the time, right? So it's also like the things that get infiltrated in our mind about like what is necessary for us to feel connected, for example. One of the things that Renee had said earlier is, you know, of the good things that came out of COVID, and I know you're not a COVID denier, so I can say this, is that we saw right in front of our eyes entire structures that were sold to us as normative change overnight because they were lies. Everything changed to catch so that capital wouldn't lose, right? One of the other things, I mean, this is part of what you were saying, is that it allowed us then to think about how we can defy geographical borders in particular ways that were cordoned off to us prior to that, where people could then be in comradeship in ways that before felt impossible, but all of a sudden overnight became necessary, and therefore they became our norm. What I'd love for us to do is, like, when things solidify into a norm, to still be able to unpack it and say, actually, just like yesterday, it wasn't this. What are all the things that are happening? It's the same thing about not having time, right? That can be real. And also, can we get in the habit of unpacking all the moving pieces as actually part of the regimen of psychic militancy, of remaining tethered to material reality? Here are all the reasons, because more often than not, despite our best intentions, despite our political commitments, we're veer off and be like, if, you know, I must not be doing this right. Look at me, I can't get my shit together. I should go out with my friends, but I really don't have it in me to do that. What's wrong with me? Why am I here? Any version of that, right? These are all psychic intrusions, parts of psychic intrusions, right? To your question about the conscious and the unconscious, I don't know that I had any idea about the unconscious, because I think the unconscious is much sexier, right? People love to stay in the unconscious. That's where psychoanalysis gets its like real, you know, rocks off, is like the unconscious. I'm actually more interested about the way the unconscious is used in a counterinsurgent way, because everything gets expelled into that or contained by that. So my project is actually, can we stay in the conscious place? Now, of course, that conscious place is animated by imprints that come from our unconscious, our own family histories, our class positions, our race positions, all these other things. Maybe we discover something about the shit that makes us tick through consciously practicing. For example, what's the stuff that's hard for me? What makes it hard in those moments of consciousness, in me committing every day to psychic militancy? What's the traps for me? What are the things I get pulled into? What are those imprints about? Maybe something emerges about where the fault lines are unconsciously. Great. But I'm not giving psychoanalysts that shit. We're taking it back. My psychic militancy podcast, actually, the mascot is Freud wrapped up in Abu Ubaidah. So we're stealing him too.
So we had another question in the chat while I give folks a minute. Are you involved with the deconstruction space? I understand that all of this is based on ideology, not fact. Any advice? They've already read to the book. The premise is that we exist with a system of beliefs, not a shared reality.
Yeah. I'm not involved in the space, but yes. But here's the thing for me is that, like, ideological imprints are very real, and they are constantly fed, and they are constantly animated within us. And it's not about like, I have my truth and you have yours, right? No, there is actually material reality in front of us. Like, there is a thing called Palestine that runs from the river to the sea. That's real, right?
Right.
And that's not up for grabs in terms of a reality, a Zionist reality versus, and I don't think you're saying that at all, please don't, but I want to put a fine point on that. But there are sort of, yes, constructs, and for me, it's about how did those come into being? What are the infrastructures of power that animate those? Why do they fall on certain fault lines over and over again? What's the purpose of that? What does it do relationally to us? How does it animate social relations in general? And then make us forget that it's actually constructed by something for a particular purpose, right? It wasn't just, again, arbitrarily done in that way. It's towards a particular purpose. I hope that gets it.
I think so.
You were asking.
Anyone else? Oh.
Okay. Renee, thank you. That's amazing. Oh, this is, I don't know if I have a question. You just said something and that was one of the things that was going to comment. Coming from hearing very often, you two like, they will
Always.
be more moderate,
Mm-hmm.
don't speak that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or that. So it's like, and having someone very close to me saying these things and saying, how do you know that your truth is the other side? Because they think, they believe that they are going the truth and you believe that you are. And I have to stand on that and say, because I have said it, because that's what it is. And you can, you can switch it, you can say whatever, but that's not gonna change what it is.
Yeah.
While we stick to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, sister. I appreciate it. So what do we say to the people who try to quiet our fire, tell us we're too radical, and then try to bring us into like thinking about what the other side is or it's their truth? Number one is that's a political project. Even if that person is a friend, it's to sort of come back to what we've been talking about what are the ways in which power intrudes upon us to make us act in the service of stabilizing power. It needs us to be conscripted into that. And there will be people in our lives, sometimes very close people, who end up channeling that and work for the stabilization of power and for the stabilization of the future of power at the expense of ours, right? And that's part of the condition of living under these intrusions, which is why we continue to struggle. Here's the thing, is like, of course the white supremacist believes that they're superior. That's their ideology. There's no half-ass ideology. They're committed to that through and through, and they will do everything in their power to remain coherent in that ideology psychically and materially. So the response is, yes, they believe that, and I don't give a fuck what they believe, right?
Yeah, but when it's coming from someone that is not
a white supremacist? Yes, but that's what I mean. But who are they, whose legacy are they fighting for? What people are they asking us to hold in mind, and at the expense of whom? And I think it's okay for us to put that up. That's what I mean about texturizing and tracking the relational demand that's being made of you, because it is presented as an innocent thing of, I'm just trying to have you understand and we're having a better, right? It's always like that. No, what you're doing is actually stabilizing power. And you're doing that in an innocent way, which is also the way that power always relies on its innocence. And it needs foot soldiers like the person you're saying to do that, because you're going to, it's going to fuck with your head more coming from that person than with the other. And then you're sitting there being like, this is somebody I trust. Is it really me? Am I being too, should I think about these other things? And then what's already happened? What's lost? You're arguing the argument over here, and power is just like, fantastic, my foot soldier just did everything I needed to do, because you're the one now confused, even though you're actually not confused. Like, you just told me here, even, you're not confused. But they start to make us engage as though we're confused, right? That as if, that as though is also part of the work of power. So the psychic militancy is also, refusing those overtures, refusing that relational engagement. One of the things that Sarah Ahmed calls it being a feminist killjoy. I like that, right? Like, you're always disrupting those. And also sort of building stamina about not being liked. There are people that are not going to like you. Exactly. I mean, you know this firsthand. But people are not going to like you, and that's an actual practice as well, if we're in alignment with the ideological positions that actually work towards the liberation that we're talking about. They're going to think you're an extremist. There's a whole piece about this from Malcolm X about being an extremist and don't be ashamed of it. So we got to be extremists.
All right. Yeah.
So, Cristina Maria, and I am a clinician. I imagine it was obvious, was it? Emanating off of me. And I also work in ancestral medicine, and I'm very involved in folk healing and all the ways that come through the soul expression on this earth. And so that was my question too. Besides the fact that how a lot of thoughts swirling through my being, which I'm sure you taught me as well. My question is how do you see the world of spirituality,
Yes.
ancestral medicine, folk healing? So in the original ways of this earth, and before people, and that actually one of the intersectionalities I would say that brings us all to that place of remembering.
Yes.
How do you see that as a powerful tool and as a way to deconstruct and reconstruct and remember? And to me, like to have the sustainability, to have the joy and the grief happening together and being able to also rise through it.
Yes.
And have the communities. So that was a big loaded expression, but bueno, I'm sure you got it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So ancestral healing, knowledge through plants, through spirituality, through the land, through all that. My answer is yes. Of course. And central to that, and let me track why, because this is such a great example of the knowledge sets that were actually stolen from us, dispelled and expelled from social life, precisely because of their vibrancy. Now getting repackaged because you can go do an ayahuasca trip and pay tons of money to a white shaman to do this, whereas before, not very long ago and still to this day, who gets punished for practicing these ways of being. And it is about ways of, I love that you said it's ways of being. It's ways of being in the world, it's ways of being with the world, it's ways of remaining rooted in the land and understanding our connection to that, which is why our liberation struggles for land are central, right? Which is why there are folks in Gaza who are continuing to make medicine from the land. People in Benin are continuing to make medicine from the land as the balm against all these chemicals that are coming through, and you have things from the land that give you that actually help with this and have been for centuries, right? Because they sprout from there. But it's both a tale of yes, what we need to root ourselves in, because this is a great example of something that's right in front of us that we can connect to, and also to track why power has to target it. Right? And not just target and I'm going to keep doing this, literally make people confused and make them think that somehow believing in herbal medicines is you being crazy or woo or whatever. Or, yeah, hell yeah, solidarity with witches, right? And what that represented in history. Here I'm bringing in Silvia Federici, of course, right? Of the knowledge holders, women as knowledge holders, or herbalists as sort of knowledge holders. So also where it intersects with cis heteropatriarchy and control and domination. So all of that plays in. It's both, again, what we need to be rooted in, which I'm using purposefully, and then also to tell the story of power. Just telling the story of power and what it targets is actually really important for us as one way back, right? And not to this sort of, old way of being, somehow there's a return, right? I say this also in the book, there isn't this virgin psyche that somehow if we just extract every psychic intrusion we can go back to and it's gonna be the best place on. No, because we're saturated by everything. Mm-hmm. But what does it mean to continuously hold on to the possibilities of that continuous return, right? Both in terms of people's return, but also the return of the things that we've always been connected to. Yeah.
Yes. And the questions in the chat, I'm going to combine two of them because I feel like they might kind of sort of be the same question. I'm going to let Barry go first. Nope, I want you to go first because we're gonna have to wrap up. If you all want time to like meet Lara, we'll have to stop the questions, right? So, so you first, and then we'll go back to the chat.
Renee, there were a couple of things that bothered me that you said. The angry black woman. I don't know why you did that, because in my head, if someone's facing me like that, in my head, you gotta say, fuck you, okay? That's
I do too.
There was also a comment you made about if they ask you what is liberation, and this is something silly on my part. If they ask me what is liberation, and I hear music playing, and I hear John Lennon singing Imagine, and that's what I work for. If you listen to the song and the word, and then we say, I'm not the only one. Not knowing that I'm not the only one is what keeps me.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to share.
Thank you.
So Barry just shared, one, he's mad at me for saying angry black woman. Barry yells at me all the time, y'all. This is consistent in life. And Barry also recognizes that he is not alone in his pursuit of liberation. And because he's not alone, the pursuit can never end. So thank you. So we have a couple of things in the chat. And then I want to make sure that you read this little passage from that chapter that I wanted you to read. I'm going to combine these a little bit, but also this just means you're going to have to do another show because we just don't have enough time. But yeah, this is life. You're always stuck with me anyway. So, but one of the questions in the chat is regarding psyops and creating a space to fight the hegemony, right? Like how do we, what's the work in that? And I'm gonna combine it with Tony's question, who wants to know if you can give a practical example of within organizing using psychic militancy. Because I do feel like countering psyops and organizing, like this is all part of the work, right?
Yes.
Someone else also wanted to know some resources for like decoding some of the psychoanalytic conversation in the book.
Yep.
But that's something that I feel like can get you to send me some notes, and then I can drop them in the show notes, and then people have them. But if we can, we'll tackle it how you want to, and then we'll do the chapter last.
Decoding the psychoanalytic part, and I apologize because I tried my best not to do the jargony shit, which is why I used examples to help animate some of it, but I apologize. There's also a glossary that says some of the obnoxious words. But my dear friend Vanessa Sinclair has a podcast called Rendering Unconscious, and she has a free class that's an introduction to psychoanalysis that she gives to everybody. It's extremely accessible. People engage with it. So that's a beautiful place just to go, because that's the point of despecialization. Like one of the things that I say is that psychoanalysis is already a despecialized knowledge, but it's in service of power. So what does it mean for us to sort of, take that back and be like, we're despecializing it because number one, we have a psyche. Number two, the unconscious is animated in these ways. They intrude on our psyche. That's why I wanted to use psychoanalysis. So we'll start there. Rendering unconscious. Vanessa Sinclair. Yeah. Okay, you mentioned psyops. How do we fuck with the mind of the oppressor? Great question. You do it through struggle, because there's nothing they hate more than you actually resisting and refusing to die or fully submit. That's number one. You're constantly sort of a thorn in their side. But the example of the Lego movies I brought up is again, I'm just gonna keep back to that. Like, proliferate that shit, send that around, right? Normalize these sorts of things happening. Antagonize anytime Zionism is sort of in place, antagonize that so it's not a normative position. They do feel intruded upon because they have lived in a world, and when I say they, here a sort of hegemonic position, Zionism or white supremacy, where they've lived in a world in which not being confronted is the norm. And they can just go about their daily lives not expecting that people are going to actually challenge their position. So there's a lot of psychic sort of collapse that happens when you don't let them get away from that and away from it. as well. So that's what I would say. And there are examples of that. So proliferate that propaganda. Examples of this in real time, of like sort of psychic militancy. One of the things is that to sort of note the ways that we are disciplined in real time. So one of the things that, you had said organizing, but let me give an example, is what does it mean for us, for example, to normalize being pro-resistance, pro-armed resistance, pro-militancy, talk about it. I do this a lot on my show. We do that a lot when I'm on your show, and you do that a lot on your show. And they can seem like small things, but they actually are a practice of paying attention to, like, what are even the small ways we bend away from this shit and why, right? The state is scary. The state is all encompassing, right? The reach of the state is not only in that hardcore power it exercises, it's also about encompassing and coercing the small things that we do and our own thinking. So are you softening how you talk about things? Do you not say, I'm with Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, whatever the things is, and why? That's an example of that, of like, how do we practice normalizing these positions as non-controversial positions? They should not be controversial positions. They are made controversial, but what does it mean to actually practice that? I think there are many people out there doing that, but I want to say it's an actual political project. This is part of, and attending to the times when we go, oh, I actually didn't do that, or I didn't say that, or what is it that actually made me shy away from this? That sort of scan also about the psychoaffective pull away from identifications from a liberatory struggle, especially those of us who actually are 100% behind it. I'm not worried about the people that aren't. They're going to find their excuses why they don't do that. But it's actually those of us who are. What is it that pulls us away? I think that's a good example of that. The other thing the last thing I'll say is I was with students at the University of British Columbia a couple weeks ago, and they invited me to talk to them about strategy, about like a unity of fields and how do we sort of talk about strategy across the board. And one of them strategically was sort of part of organizing for a divestment, for the university to divest, right? Which we've seen versions of that. And we're kind of questioning, like, is that a waste of our time to do that? And I think one of the things, this to go back to what is psychic militancy, is there have to be strategies and about antagonizing the university, making them confess their actual position, because in the end, they are companies that care about their capital and their brand. And making them confess that is a strategy in and of itself. Now, one of the things we talked about is that when the investment then becomes in actually getting the thing done, and then you feel demoralized if that doesn't happen, that's your clue that you're not engaging militantly, that it's actually, right, derailed you, because then it becomes about, if them not doing what you want them to do, divest, causes demoralization, they've fucked with your head. Because you're not able to retain, I'm strategically here to disrupt, I'm strategically here to antagonize, I'm strategic, irrespective of whether that, if they divest, fantastic, right? But if they don't, and then you become demoralized, that's the win, right? So it's about also being able to discern that, right? And us sort of understand when something's strategic, and then understand when we need to walk away if it's causing demoralization.
Yeah. So
yes,
make sure that I have the right page marked.
Yes.
And then I'm going to last remind people of something. And I don't even remember if it's actually, I feel like it's you that said this to me, but it might have been, I was around you when this was said. I don't remember.
Okay.
But one of these times, the words, and I literally used these words yesterday, and the person that I said it to was in the room, so she can say it. Learn when you should not waste your breath and your spit.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Because people are consistently, this is what you're talking about, right? The person who's like, but what about, stop.
It ends there.
It ends right there, right? Like, right. Like the minute someone tries to tell me there's not a genocide, our conversation is done.
Yep.
right? I don't have to engage in it. The minute somebody tries to tell me racism is in my head, conversation is done, right? And I am learning when not to engage with people who are living in their own delusions and are happy there, right? Because some people are happy in Delulu land. They are, like, and it's okay, like, go for it.
But they want you to join.
But they want you to join, right? And the minute you're arguing with them about why this thing that you know is a thing, you have fallen into the trap.
Yep.
Because now you're arguing with a fool, and from a distance, nobody knows the difference, right? Right, right?
Yeah.
So I will turn it over for you to read this last bit. And folks in YouTube land, once Lara is done, we'll close the stream. Thank you so much for joining and for watching. So much appreciated that you all always support. Jared is not here to do his usual, like, what does he always say? Peace only if you're willing to fight for it. That's his Fred
right.
Hampton.
That's right.
And, as always, share all the things that he tells you all to do that I never say because this is not my forte, but I wanted to end with you reading this.
Okay.
So that's why I'm doing all of this
I will.
now.
I will. Thank you. Give some love to Black Liberation Media folks and to the show, and become a subscriber, Patreon, all the things. It helps all this amazing content. So this is from the conclusion of the chapter on psychic militancy. It's on page 142 for folks who have the book. Invoking the united fight of political prisoners from Turtle Island to Palestine, revolutionary Black political prisoner Mumia Abu-Jamal provides a characteristically militant message to the political organizers and audience at the 2025 People's Conference for Palestine in Detroit, Michigan. Like Walid Daqqa, Daruba bin Wahad, and other political prisoners who have studied the logics of power's attempt to sear consciousness, Mumia grounds us in the political necessity to refuse psychic inversions in service of our revolutionary futures. And these are Mumia's words, and folks, follow Prison Radio also to hear Mumia say these words. When we speak about Israeli Defense Force, I wonder who speaks about an Israeli offense force. That would be more honest. When we think about prisoners in Palestine, we have to think about all of Palestine. It is not just in the prisons of Israel where people are confined. All of Palestine is an open-air prison in Israel because of the ever-present occupation that has denied them life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. You know, those great things that Americans promise, and denied them everything, even life itself. The struggle must continue, and it will, as long as hearts beat around the world, as long as eyes see around the world, and as long as we love that which we call human. I thank you. With love, not fear, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. With love, not fear, Mumia directs us to the urgency of psychic militancy, guiding us to remain rooted in our unbending analysis of material reality in the face of tenacious efforts to derail our political commitments. As we discuss in this chapter, the repetitious return to these seemingly self-evident points is one way in which we commit to the precondition. Seizing the compulsion to repeat in this direction is a political strategy and practice that contains life-sustaining potentials. In this psychic routine of refusal, we track the violent work of the psycho-political affective and the grammar it mobilizes in our interiority with intent to settle. Here in struggle, as with my patient, we affirm that militant refusals are necessary so that no one sides with colonialism, so that we are not seduced into the politics of recognition by murderous states, so that we are not conscripted into stabilizing colonial efforts at dialogue that work to ensure settler colonial and imperial futures at the expense of ours. As with Mumia's unbending and crystalline analysis, psychic militancy is about willfully committing to a psychic clarity that insists on tracking, tracing, and naming the logic of violence, refusing to wrench it from its structural and material existence. Rather than being an empty or pedantic exercise, psychic militancy emerges as a counterforce to the civilizing mission of appeals to reason, or Kleinian psychoanalysts quote depressive position in the face of violence. We can apprehend where the impulse to reach to reason might come from, contouring the identifications that are implanted and animated within us to do the work of carceral discipline. It helps us remain vigilant to attempts to normalize and naturalize